Welcome back to Gotcha Interact. Today we're going to be talking and doing a pre-release guide looking at Yunli and her kit. Now, talking a lot about her, she's mainly going to be focusing on being a DPS character, obviously as a destruction unit, going a lot into actually focusing on follow-up attacks. Now, looking at follow-up in general, it's maybe had some rough times in the past, and, maybe possibly with this character, showing a lot of what she can do, possibly might pull follow-up a little bit back into what a lot of people might actually be looking for. Let's go ahead and read through the kit, talk about each part of the kit, and then we'll go through and talk about our personal thoughts on it. So first and foremost, talking about these skills. Looking at the basic attack, it's nothing special, just dealing physical damage equal to 100% of Yunli's attack to a single enemy. Her skill is a blast, so it's an AoE basically attack. It's called Bladeborn Quake. It restores HP equal to 30% of Yunli's attack, plus 200. These are all at level 10 attributes, by the way, and deals physical damage equal to 120% of Yunli's attack to a single enemy target, and physical damage equal to 60% of Yunli's attack to adjacent targets.
Looking at Yunli's ultimate, this is where a lot of her kit comes together and most of her kit kind of sits in. So first off, it's worthy to note that she has technically, you could say, 2 charges of her ult, very similar to Argenti. So she has a max energy of 240, but the ultimate, when you use this, is only going to consume 120 energy. So while it is charged up, you can be passively charging it in the background and kind of saving that initial use. Just note that it's not like you can double stack it, and when you do reach full 2 stacks, it makes a more powerful ult. It's not like that. It just means you can be charging the second one on standby. So here's what the ult does. Yunli is going to gain parry and then taunt all enemies on the field, lasting until the end of the next turn of either an ally or an enemy. And also, you're going to increase the crit damage of Yunli's next counter by 100%. And we will talk about the counter here in a minute. Now, when the counter talent effect is triggered while parry is active, it will be switched to a counter into it cull effect and also dispel parry. If no counters are triggered while parry is active, when the effect ends, Yunli will immediately launch a counter into it slash effect on a random enemy target. Now, what's the difference between the counter into it slash and counter into it cull? The slash is going to deal physical damage to the target equal to 200% of Yunli's attack, and then deal more physical damage to the adjacent targets equal to 100% of her attack. Now, the cull effect's basically going to do the same thing, but on top of that, it's then going to additionally deal 6 instances of damage, with each instance dealing about 60% physical damage of her attack to random single enemy targets. When Yunli deals damage through any of these abilities, it's all considered as ultimate damage.
Now taking a look at the talent, it is called Flash Forge. It states that when Yunli is attacked by an enemy target, it additionally regenerates 15 energy and immediately launches a counter on the attacker that attacked her, dealing physical damage equal to 120% of Yunli's attack, and physical damage to adjacent targets equal to 60% of Yunli's attack. Her technique is just something extra special, where she will gain the ward effect for 20 seconds, and then when entering combat by attacking enemies or receiving an attack, it immediately inflicts into a cull on a random enemy target and increases the damage dealt by this attack by 80%. Looking quickly just over these bonus abilities, as they are pretty small, pretty quick, but they are pretty helpful for her. Her first bonus ability states that when using a counter, it increases Yunli's attack by 30% for 1 turn. Her second states that while in the parry state, Yunli resists crowd control debuffs received and reduces damage received by 20%. The third states that every time one Intuit Slash is used, the next Intuit Slash must become Intuit Cull. Taking a look now at everything as we've looked at kind of what she goes into, with traces going into attack percent, HP percent, and crit rate. That helps a lot considering she's increasing a lot of crit damage in her personal kit as well as her light cone as well. With the attack percent increases, obviously that is the main focus here, and the HP percent basically to just, as you've seen, she's just trying to taunt enemies to make sure that they're attacking her so that she can do the counter. Having the extra HP percent is pretty nice so that she doesn't, die pretty easily in battle. It seems like, obviously, as we're going through this, it's an interesting way, obviously it's pretty seen as like a 2.0 version of what Clara does, maybe in just a little bit better way, maybe just higher damage scaling. She is a limited character versus the standard character that Clara is, so I don't know. There's a lot to do here. There's plenty of different teams. In my personal opinion, I think the biggest and best way to go about her, obviously, is to have her as a driver. We've had some recent characters that could buff her. Obviously, characters like Robin are going to be great, support characters for her. Hua, who is actually going to be running alongside of her, most likely in the actual banner, could be a good support for her. Some other characters that are going to be great, just overall good support characters like Sparkle. Healers are going to be very nice for her, considering she's probably taking a lot of heat on her. And usually with destruction characters, you want healers because they reduce a lot of their HP in their kits. But with Yunli, thankfully, she can work with shielders like Japard or Venturine, March 7th, characters like that who can still use shields. Thankfully, she doesn't delete her own HP, so you're not really in problems of deleting your own personal HP with the character of herself. In general, she can actually use, unlike some other destruction characters, she can actually use at least a shielder, at least with this specific team. She's not like Jing Liu or something like that, or specifically also talking about Blade, who likes to have his HP going up and down. But the biggest thing here, it's helpful that she increases her HP with her, her skill and whatnot. She's got some great teammates that can work with her, a recent character, Jade, as well. So there's a lot going on here. Rift, what are your thoughts about what is Yunli going to do for maybe meta-wise? What is she going to change in terms of characters, especially with the characters she's running with?
Well, looking, obviously we've looked at her kit and stuff, knowing that she kind of centers around this massive follow-up attack, which is very interesting. I mean, we have Jade coming out around this time as well, and we know her kit is all about doing her follow-up attack as well. I'm kind of led to believe, because of the state of follow-up in the game and the banter that it sometimes gets, I feel like they're really trying to pull follow-up back into, maybe not to meta, but to be a lot more viable, and it's definitely like an okay option outside of pure fiction, right? Because everyone always just talks about, well, if you're gonna use follow-up, I mean, it's good for pure fiction, but outside that, it's not your go-to. And it's like, yeah, that might be true. Maybe with Jade coming out, and then Yunli's also, I feel like they're really trying to pull it out of the gutter. And I'm kind of happy about that, just because I personally always liked the follow-up kind of style. It's very fun. I pulled Topaz on her first run, and so maybe I'm a little bit biased to follow-up type of teams. Clara was my first standard, and I've liked her ever since. So I've always been exposed to the follow-up kind of play style, and I've always actually really enjoyed it and been hoping for characters like Jade, characters like Yunli to kind of help bring it up back to where it's very usable and definitely a viable option, right? Because we're kind of in the break effect meta. I think Penacony was really hitting on the break effect stuff, and and even the Harmony Trailblazer helping out a lot with that. Characters like Boot Hill, Firefly, and even Ruan Mei, who was right before Penacony, helping with that. And then she had a rerun. Like, everything was like, okay, break effect, break effect. I think now, maybe coming out of that, I just sense maybe they're trying to help the follow-up state, right? With that all being said, I think a lot of people, and I mentioned Topaz being an okay or viable unit to use with Jade, and then, obviously the first thought is, well, she's a single attack, so that's not going to help Jade too much. And I feel like the same thing is going to be here, where I think Topaz is an okay character to use with Yunli, just because I think a lot of people overlook the fact that Topaz gives such an incredible buff to follow-up attack damage with just her skill. It's not even tied to her ultimate. As long as she's putting on that effect, that proof of debt effect to an enemy, any follow attacks that hit that enemy are doing like 50% more damage. And so it's kind of like, yes, she's a hunt character, Topaz that is, but she is giving a pretty considerable buff to other follow-up attack type characters, which is why I'm like, I would be okay using her with Jade. I'd be okay using her here with Yunli, and I think that will definitely be a viable option. You could do kind of a Topaz Yunli comp with a Harmony and a Sustain, something like that. I think that's what I'd personally try, just because I know I have Topaz. I don't know yet if I'm going for Yunli or not, but because like you said, Vixen being basically what looks like a Clara 2.0, I mean, physical, destruction, and revolves around this follow-up attack. That basically sounds like Clara, right? But this is just going to be a lot better, especially, being a limited character. That makes sense. It's going to be very interesting to see how, I want to see how other people would pair her in teams. Like, if you're listening to this part of the video right now, like, go ahead, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Like, what are your thoughts on our kit right now? And, because everything's in beta right now, we obviously know there's a lot of changes going on, with version 2 to 3, and now we're kind of waiting for version 4 up till the actual release of the characters. And if you guys have been watching our videos, that kind of thing happened with Jiao Cho, where we put out a video, and then the next one, we had to do an update because his kit changed, and it was a big deal. So maybe with Yunli, we'll see something like that too. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Vixen?
I think there's a lot to say about her. Like I've already talked about, you could use her with Jade. Going into pure fiction is a good idea. Maybe the issue is if you don't have a great healer, you know, since Jade kind of destroys a lot of HP out of Yunli, it kind of forces you to go for a healer route. Huohuo is probably going to be a really good support, but that can hurt people who are more free to play or who don't have a lot of Stellar Jade or whatnot, and, you know, considering they're on the same side of the banner most likely. Other characters that are going to be pretty good, you know, Sparkle's going to be nice. I'm not sure if she's necessary since it doesn't look like Yunli's really skill point hungry. So I'm not sure if that's, you know, Sparkle's a necessary, you know, character to pull for. Robin does seem like a great support for her. A lot of the characters that are around her seem okay to throw in. You know, I mean, once again, universal buffers are going to be good. So even though, you know, characters like Ruan Mei or Silver Wolf or Robin or Sparkle, whatever, have their certain niches that they could help more than others, they are still pretty good universal buffers in general. Even characters that are on standard, like Brona. Even looking at the 4-stars, characters like Ting Yun could be really good for this character, buffing a lot of attack, giving a lot of energy. So characters like Huohuo, who can give energy in her ultimate, same thing with Ting Yun, who can give energy in her ultimate. It seems like those are going to really be helping Yunli as well, considering she's always trying to make sure that she has using those ultimate charges as much as possible to do those intuit, cull, and slash hits. There's so much to go on with her as a character. I think she's way more flexible than a character like Clara. If you are heavily invested into Clara, I'm not sure that she's worth the pull necessarily, but that's kind of a to pull or not to pull question, which we'll go at when we actually go over looking at the to pull or not to pull type banner. But in general here, I think she's got some good things. She did just come out of a version kind of change with a lot of nerfing in her actual damage ability, but I don't necessarily think that that's really a problem, considering she's still putting out some pretty good damage. I think they are trying to make sure that follow-up isn't going to just, you know, blow past anything like break effect or anything like that. And I'm not sure it would, even if they kind of didn't do the nerf that they did, but I think they're just trying to be reasonable with what they do.
Yeah, and I like how you brought up Brona, actually, with the action advance and then also the crit damage increase. I think it's perfect for a character like Yunli, who is kind of waiting to kind of... She doesn't do all of her damage over time or kind of balanced. She kind of does it very bursty, very front-loaded damage with that follow-up. And then when you don't have that, you're kind of just rejuvenating the energy or getting uptime back on your other characters with the buffs. So a character like Brona just feels like a great fit for your Harmony slot in the team, at least. And it also brought to my mind the fact that the question I know people would ask is, do I want to use attack boots or do I want to use speed boots? And to that I would say, personally, I would use attack just to get as much damage as you possibly can out of her hit. Because in my thinking, if you give her too much speed, then you're not giving a lot of time for the enemy, because you want the enemy to hit you as soon as you use the ultimate. If your other characters are slower than Yunli, that means Yunli is going to be going first most of the time before your other characters, which means your characters would be going after Yunli, and you want to try to mitigate that as much as possible to where that's not the case, right? You want the enemy usually to go after. Now, that could just be totally thrown out the window with a change in the beta or something, because there was some things we were seeing there, but who knows? That's just a thought I had to my mind. So, like, if you know the enemy's about to go, you could just use, like, Brona. If you know you're using Brona right before the enemy, just use Brona's skill and then have Yunli go to where you know you can use her or whatever, something like that. But also just the crit damage increase is going to be very good.
Well, that's everything we've got talking about Yunli. Once again, as we talked about previously, if you guys do have any other ideas about what you kind of want to do with Yunli, or maybe what you would like to see with her in a future version change possibly before she actually drops, maybe some teams that you guys have ideas for, go ahead and let us know down in the comments. Thank you guys for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one.